Okay, so the instructions for the breakout room: reflect on your type and what about your type has really, really worked for you. What about this particular reality strategy has worked for you in your life and maybe does really still work for you in your life? And if you know your tri-type and your instinctual stacking or sequencing, look at the whole reality strategy. How does it work for you and how has it really worked for you in your life? So we're going to spend 15 minutes in groups of 3 and just divide the time equally amongst you and hear from the people in the room and share. What is it about these strategies of ours that works? So, yeah, Renata, you got it ready.
Yep, we're going into breakout in 3, 2, 1.
See you in 15. Ciao. Okay, so let's just take a little bit of time after that to just notice what landed for you from what other people were saying. Just take a minute to appreciate that. Appreciate the types of the people that you're in the room with and what they shared with you, the insights that you're going to be taking forward about their type and about the kinds of stories that people have, the language that they use. And then also just spend a moment reflecting on what you heard yourself saying, because no one might really have asked you that question before of how does your personality work for you. So yeah, just take a moment to appreciate what you just learned. So I'm going to share some slides just to keep us on track. So our friend Greg on our group shared this meme. I thought it was absolutely hilarious. And I'm just wondering, amongst us, what our kind of experience is of being diagnosed or labeled or interpreted or treated as a type, and maybe what part of us is most resistant to change. Just being really able to identify, you know. So reflecting for a minute on the part of you that doesn't want to change. Write down a few sentences about that, and we're not going to go into breakout rooms about this, but it's really worth spending a little bit of time with. What part of you doesn't want to change? And think about that feeling when somebody tries to make you buy something that you don't want, or tries to give you advice, or tries to know something about your life. Think about how that feels to you and where you feel it in your body. When somebody tries to cajole you or advise you or direct you in some way. What part of you reacts? And I wonder if anyone would be willing to share in the open group how that feels to you. Teresa, can I ask you? You have to unmute.
Sorry, I just had a Word document open because I didn't have a pen. I'm somewhere else. So the thing is, 9s receive a lot of advice. And as you were saying, as you were speaking, I could feel it. It's here, so it stops here. So trying to accommodate other people's point of view and understand where they're coming from. But then when it switches to why don't you just do this and why don't you just do that, the blockages in the voice are not actually speaking to that. And there's two reasons. I think one is being a body type, in the fact that if a demand is not, if a reply is not demanded, if someone is genuinely coming from their heart, it does take that time to actually process that, to sift it through, and then to work out what you're going to keep and what you're going to throw away. I think when you're less skilled as a 9, you can be tending to swallow it whole or reject it whole. Just do the body thing, like you know. So I think a 9 who has done work is actually still understands the processing takes long, and you know, I can't give you an answer immediately, the answer you want, and the more you push me for it, the more then I'm likely just to give you the answer you want, just so you go away, really. So we shut the conversation down, like, you know, so you get the answer you want, then you can be happy and go away and say, all right, you know, but actually, it's, you know, inside it's no way, Jose. So I suppose what's difficult in this forum when we're talking with coaches is the fact that as a coach or as a helper, you might not get the feedback you need at that session. You might have to wait till the next one to revisit it with the 9 and the body type, because we tend to have to sort of put everything together to work out, to get a whole view, to actually work out things. So I don't know if that makes sense, Ingrid, but yeah, it's sort of it's here in the body. It's here. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I heard you say 2 things about that place. So the one is there's a blockage in your voice to speak maybe your truth or your version of reality. And then at the same time, the swallowing metaphor. So am I going to swallow your advice whole? Am I going to, you know, sift out what I want and don't want? But the main thing that stood out for me in what you were saying is that you still focused very much on the other person, like where are they coming from? Is it coming from their heart? What do they need? What do they want? They want an answer. And I found that very interesting, you know, and curious, you know, not something that I expected, but I suppose within the 9 attachment style, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and we're best processing actually on our own. When I'm with someone, I'm still out of reference, I'm still into your agenda. So it's actually, you know, that going away and thinking about it, but not letting that 9s off the hook. You know, you can't just forget about it. I do want an answer, but that sort of if you want to carry on the metaphor, it is that digestion, and I suppose for a younger 9, the swallowing it whole, yes, I'll do that. It actually sometimes is just because you're in that person's agenda, you're in that person's energy. And at that moment, it just seemed like a really good idea. And at that moment, I'm genuinely wrapped up in it and I genuinely believe it. And then, of course, I go away the next day and think, what the bloody hell was that? Like, I don't want to do that. So that's also another dangerous thing with this sort of an energetic, that you can get into somebody else's agenda, very merged into it. And at that moment, you are, you're at a seminar, you are genuinely 100% on board because you've sort of gone into that energy. So again, that might sort of help, like, well, I thought you were really into this, and then you're not doing it. It's because, as I say, of that sort of that outer referencing again for a 9. So
fantastic. Thank you. That's incredibly insightful and helpful to us, with our 9 clients and understanding what's going on for them and why, we might have a conversation and they look fully on board and they want to do our homework idea and then they don't. Like, what's actually
they don't do it.
Yeah, they won't do it. Or why we sometimes start getting into that cheerleading mode with 9s. Like, so I don't know. It's interesting that you say 9s get a lot of advice because it often almost feels like it's being elicited. There's a counter-transference going on as well. It's very interesting.
Well, I think it's more, from your point of view, I can understand why you're saying that. But so it seems like, so as I say, when I'm with it and I'm listening to you, I can fully understand and get why you're saying that, because it is something that we can see other people's perspectives really easily. But until I have digested it and had the time to take it in, you can never assume the 9 is on board with that. And the other thing is we're not great talkers. I know we're alleged saga talkers, and I do that, but it's got to feel right or not feel right. And sometimes it just feels wrong for us, and we don't necessarily need to keep talking about it and keep explaining it. We just know for us it's intuitive, it's intrinsically not right for us. Why? Tell me why. Give me a reason. That's more the head space or maybe the heart space. And again, that will then know you're being stubborn or difficult. It's very difficult sometimes to translate the body into the head space. So
yes. And
so it's not.
You wanted to say something?
It's genuinely not being awkward. It's just the not being articulate in the same way to describe a sensation as it could be a thought or a feeling. It's slightly easier to convert into words in a way.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I want to ask, like, in contrast maybe to being given homework or cheerlead or given advice or something, interpersonally, I mean, it sounds like the way you're talking that for a coach it would look like no resistance at all, because the 9's fully there, they're going along, they're kind of fusing, they're connecting with you, and you feel like, wow, this is such a great coaching session. We're getting on so well, and the 9's like fully into this process, and obviously there's not a lot of self-reconnection going on for the 9 in that moment. I'd like to maybe ask you, what is it like for you? What kinds of processes make you really connect with yourself? What evokes a different experience for you where you actually get the deep value of self-reconnection?
Well, again, as I say, it's very much, I think with that coaching experience is a very easy clue is the fact that the 9 will stop talking. And so when the coach recognizes that they're doing 70% of the talking or 80% of the talking, that shutting down has started to happen. And for something to go into the body, I need a pause. I need you to stop talking, and I just need to have a pause. And also I need to be allowed to talk. As I say, we're not linear, so it's being allowed to talk around it. And an inexperienced coach can think, oh, you're getting into story, or I need to interrupt you there and get you refocused. But they're not really understanding the energy of how I'm trying to create this sort of Rubik's cube of so when I do talk, and again, it's that interruption or just not being allowed to. So when I'm in with my 9 group, when we're together, you know, a question could be asked, and you know, we can wait a minute or 2 minutes, and then our teacher will say, what do you think, Teresa? And then somebody will come out with something really profound because they've had the chance to take it in, take it down, and then bring it back up. Whereas if it's quick fire, you're just staying up here in this bit, which, so I don't know if that answers. So space and time, and to understand sort of, we pick up very quickly when people are being impatient with us, and they will either shut down, or get stubborn, or we'll just give the answer you want.
And I imagine there's immense anger that builds up behind that.
I think that little example you give at the beginning, everybody can appreciate that feeling in your body when someone's trying to sell you something you don't want. That really, you know, it's so you know, uncomfortable. So that sort of is, yeah, it's anger. Yeah, it's anger.
Thank you for that. And I just invite everybody to reflect on that. The 9s in your life, the 9 coachees that you have, clients, just really reflecting on how you may have worked with them in the past, and how what you've just heard can filter into your ways of working going forward. I mean, what I'm really hearing there is appreciating the non-linearity, taking time, not taking over the silences and speaking on behalf of the 9, or making suggestions, or, you know, no pep talking, all of that, but really creating space and listening, you know, just really appreciating that energy. So, I mean, that's, yeah.
And for me, you know, when someone's doing that, but can keep pulling me back, you know, like the puppy on the mat, keep bringing me back to what, you know, I do appreciate that. I really do. You know, that is very, very helpful for me. So yes, it isn't non-directive, but it just might need to be. And I think it's for 8s and 1s as well. I don't think it's just 9s. I think all the 3 body types, like the 1 can give you the answer they should do, or what would be the right thing to do. But if we're trying to get to what they really want to do, again, they, you know, all the 3 body types, I think, just need a bit more of that spaciousness.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So yeah, just reflect on that. Like, where have you fallen into the trap of trying to cajole 9s? And I know that I certainly did in my earlier days of coaching 9s, had the impression that they need to be kind of kicked, or, you know, given some explosives to get them to the average 3, you know, get busy, get doing things, step into the limelight. And I think that is a very profound misunderstanding of what the line to 3 looks like. And what I found with 9s is that the line to 3 is really about deep authenticity. the virtue at 3 is that veracity and authenticity and truth to self. So, we can go into some of the type-specific things for some of the other types in a minute. But I really just wanted us to get a chance to listen to Teresa and her speaking about a type 9 and appreciating where the resistance comes from and what it's about. Getting a sense of what's going on behind the scenes when, a 9 is being quiet. And, thank you for giving us a little window into, maybe some of the mistakes that we've been making as coaches as well. It's helpful. So I see that there are a couple of hands up, or were. I want to go, if people put their hands down again. Craig's hand was up, and someone else.
So thanks, Teresa. That's very insightful. My question is, and I'm an 8, so my wing is a 9. But it's getting to where I understand you need process and so forth. But in a situation, be it in a business or in a relationship, that time that you need, how do you balance that with having to make decisions? And there's my 8 sort of moving forward. So in terms of something, I can appreciate if we talking about maybe something happening in 7 months' time, let's throw some ideas on the table. But on things that are now more sort of immediately pressing, how do you balance, or from a 9 perspective, can you how do you balance that and those relationships with colleagues and family?
Can I hold up the process for a second here? Because I want to get into some of the content on the other types first, and keep the session moving forward a little bit, and just park that question for a minute, because part of the session is about looking at what makes us want to change a type. So I'm glad you acknowledged that, Craig, that part of an 8 is like there's urgency, there's a bias for action, and what about that? So there's like an immediate sense that something else needs to happen. So let's just park that for a second, if you don't mind, Teresa, not getting the space to answer that question. Is that okay if we keep that for a second and move on?
Yes, it is okay, but we only need 7 minutes, not 7 months. Just usually. It might seem like 7 months, but it's only minutes. So yeah, it's fine. We'll talk about it later.
Okay, thank you. Great. Yeah, so just getting an appreciation of what might be going on in the background of someone's experience that from our type and with our lens seems unreasonable or irrational. And as coaches, we usually try and coach our type. So one of the things I've really learned from Tom Condon is we coach our strengths, but we also coach our own defenses. And all the assumptions in our reality strategy go into how we coach. Like one of my 4 colleagues wants to take people into the depths of their experience and their childhood wounding, and how does that really feel, and wanting them to join the dots in a very self-analytical way. And, it doesn't match the situation the person's in. So if we want to be client-centric, how do we become aware of not imposing our strategy on other people and not negating theirs, not thinking that there's a problem with their reality strategy, but really pacing them and going with them and discovering from them what they experience as the limitations of their reality strategy. And at the same time, deeply appreciating how it's worked for them in the past and what part of them is really not looking to change at all. And even if you've been invited in to coach them, they are very likely to be wanting to be coached on things that are not your top priority from your style. So just being aware of our predispositions. So I'm going to carry on with a couple of slides here. So the themes for today, really trying to think about things like how do we build rapport with types that is tailored to them, that appreciates their different instinctual bias to ours, that appreciates their tri-type, and as I said, with self-awareness of our own one. So if I'm an 837 and I'm coaching a 927 or a 925, there's such a big difference between our tri-types. And if they're a sexual dominant and I'm a sexual blind, there's a very good chance that, you know, I'm going to be going in with a very mismatched approach, whether it's to debriefing or change or what we think the priorities should be. And just if we become aware of that, we can become a lot more client-centric. And if we put them into a defensive state with any tacit shoulds, like you should be different to how you are, you should be doing this, you shouldn't be so trapped in your Enneagram 9 ego strategy, you need to be more like a 3 or whatever. If we come with any of those assumptions, we're actually not bringing them out of a defensive state, we're triggering them into a defensive state. Because bear in mind that reality strategy has really worked for them in so many ways. And there is a part of them that's very scared of change. And then also thinking about what are the vulnerable parts in us that are resisting change? Like, yes, and you know, the 7 thing has worked very well for me. I have a lot of fun. I'm busy with so many things. I love everything. I'm very ecstatic and exuberant a lot of the time. Yeah, it's got its limitations, granted. But there's going to be a part of me that's scared of giving all of that up. Because what then? I might be bored or lonely or notice areas in my life that are empty and where I feel so worried about the future. So really trying as a coach to appreciate that our clients have very, very, very good reasons for having their strategy in the first place and the vulnerabilities and avoidances behind that strategy. So not going in thinking that now we've got this Enneagram thing that tells us about all the limitations of a type and the shadow and the vice, that it's now our job to tell the client, you know, what's wrong with them and why they should change. So that's really a big part of what this is about. And then at the same time, recognizing that, you know, the client is suffering and there are a lot of cognitive biases built into our type and a lot of self-limiting behaviors and self-limiting beliefs. And we know very well from the Enneagram that if the client manages to relax that personality a bit and to relax that fixed stance a bit, that there's a lot more available to them in terms of responsivity, responding rather than reacting, ease of being. You know, we know from our Enneagram work how much is available to them, but it's the way that we sell that change to them, whether it's a state change or behavior change, that's going to make all the difference. And in ways that are not at all shaming or criticizing. And this is such a big challenge for us because the Enneagram is a descriptive system. It's also normative, which means that it's kind of telling us how we should be. There is such a thing as, you know, 7 needs to go to 5. Like, okay, I better try that. How do I do that? My inner critic gets very busy with trying to tell me how I should be. And types with an inner critic will know very well that the Enneagram gets mobilized as a self-shaming tool. You know, and I've seen that a lot with 4s. The 4 client says, oh, there I am again going into my woe is me. And, you know, their inner critic kicks in and shames them. And it's armed with Enneagram knowledge, which makes it doubly potent. So how do we as coaches be with somebody in a way that we offer them a space in which they can discover new possibilities for themselves, but without shaming their ego strategy and without giving their inner critic new armaments, or without triggering that defensiveness where they're feeling like, bad about themselves and wanting to end the coaching process potentially even, or to just go along with it in a way that looks like they're going along with it, but deep down they're not feeling great and nothing's really moving for them. So I'll play you a little video. You can have some reflection about it in a second. Let me just move this picture. Okay, so let's hear. This is a resource from Nike, and they've got amazing resources. Oh, just a sec before I play this. The resources that I have here are often from a psychotherapeutic context, and obviously we're not talking therapy here, we're talking coaching. But I use trauma resources and resources from psychotherapy and psychiatry because there's a spectrum. And we're dealing, even those coaches, we're not dealing with clinical issues. People are people, and the structure of the defenses is the same. And because as coaches, we're offering a therapeutic space. Therapy means healing. It doesn't necessarily mean clinical psychotherapy. So the way that we show up can be either healing and supportive, or it can be constricting. So I just wanted to put that in perspective. I'm not saying that our scope of practice is psychotherapy, but that the learnings are extremely relevant for us and the perspectives. So let's hear from Pat Ogden, amazing, amazing teacher.
Well, resistance is not a term I'm fond of, to start with. When I was first learning to be a psychotherapist in the early 1970s, I met Ron Kurtz, and everybody was talking about resistance even then. And he said, if you think your client is resistance, you need to look at how they're not feeling safe. And that really made an impression on me. I also often think that when we call clients resistant or difficult, it's basically because our interventions aren't working, because we feel incompetent, right? That said, there are clients that are challenging, that get into patterns of response that they can't get out of, that have internal conflicts, that live in their the way they think, that lives in their emotions, that lives in their body, where they have, say, impulses to grow and expand, but also impulses to pull in and retract. So these conflicts, I think, are often named as resistance. Sometimes there's such a tendency to blame the client for not responding to our interventions that I feel cautious with that word, resistant.
Yeah. So hopefully you walk away from today with something of that as a reframe when you get to clients where you really feel as though you're bashing against a wall, you're failing, your work isn't having an impact, you're still hearing the stories from your clients, employees and subordinates about their behavior, and they're still derailing and self-sabotaging in every way. And just being able to notice in yourself how that makes you feel, where you're attached to a certain outcome, your definition of success with that client. And then also, as she says, where is the client maybe not feeling safe? And this applies also in the debriefing, obviously, when we meet somebody and they don't want to hear about aspects of the Enneagram, or they block certain things. They say, no, I didn't agree with that at all. Or, they feel hurt in some way. That we really appreciate that it's got so much to do with safety. How do we establish safety? How do we validate and respect that person? And how do we work with their motivation to change? So, Tom says here, motivation to change is absolutely essential. And each Enneagram style has typical built-in motivators. Some of them obvious, some more hidden and subtle. And some of those motivators will be what they want to get away from, things that are hurting them and causing them pain and suffering and constriction in their lives. And then there'll be things that they're drawn towards and things that they want. And sometimes the things that they want will be what's called a misinformed outcome. Like you can have a 1 coming to you because they want to be even more perfect and they want to be the perfect boss, in which case their ego is defining the agenda. But we're not going to go into too much of that now, but to appreciate that if you find the built-in motivator with the client and you tap into their concerns, rather than having the Enneagram in your mind of how they should be, you're going to obviously be working with them and really supporting them from within themselves, rather than doing any sense of fixing the client is going to evoke resistance. So these are some of the motivators for change for some of the types. And the session is not really today about the motivators for each type. So I want to share these slides with you so that you can look at these in your own time. But these are the things that will bring a client usually into private coaching if they are looking for their own coaching. They're things that have caused them suffering that they want to deal with. Or in a work context, sometimes people are pressurized tacitly, or not even tacitly, they're sent for coaching, in which case we've got to be even more careful about being complicit with an agenda that's about, you've got to change, you've been sent to me to be fixed. We've got to quickly change that situation to where the person knows that we're on their side and that we care about the things that are affecting them, really, and then also obviously if they are pushing towards an outcome that's very much driven by their ego strategy, like if a 3 wants to use the coaching just to get the next promotion and the next big success, that we be careful about being drawn in too much to that agenda and get to some of the underlying motivations and some of the ways in which that could potentially disserve them in some ways, but without giving them advice. So we're walking a fine line here a lot of the time, because we've got this knowledge system of the Enneagram, which is so unbelievably precise. Like if someone tells you they're a sexual, social 794 with self-pres blind, they've basically given you a blueprint of their life. And if you know the Enneagram well, you pretty much know the issues that they're facing and the kinds of things they have to deal with. So it's just, how do you hold that knowledge without using it in a shaming or advisory way? And this is a deep topic, and it could be a whole series of seminars and a whole course. But what this little session here today, I'm just hoping to create a placeholder in your mind, a little space for you to reflect on this and potentially explore it in your own work with people. Like, where am I tacitly pressuring this person to be different from how they are? Where am I tacitly shaming their ego strategy? Where am I potentially getting upset that they don't want to see their vices, where they don't want to see the fixation? And how am I working with that? With that, what I call resistance. But Pat Ogden is reminding us, well, if they don't want to go there, there's something that's making them feel unsafe. And we know that the change we're trying to sell is a really, really positive change. I mean, the Enneagram, you can trust the Enneagram. Not all of you have been working with it for a long time, but I 100% trust the system to lead us, if we work with it in the right way, with a kind and compassionate and sensitive way, bringing presence and self-compassion to our different inner parts and the inner conflicts, that it does result in more of this sense of worth, aliveness, a recovery of self-agency, so a real deepening of our connectedness to other people. So the system is powerful, and the knowledge that it offers is really valid. But how do we work with it in such a way as people can experience the potential of doing the work and experience the potential of it in the room with you, so that in the room with you, they feel an easing of their being. They feel that it's safe to relax their personality a bit. You know, when I was first coaching, I've told the story before, I was coaching a 3 who was like the blue-eyed boy of the CEO. He was just the most clean-cut, brilliant, top star performer. And every time he came to a session, he wanted to show me his board pack, like the presentation he was going to be giving it to the board, and how wonderful it was. And he was showing me the graphs of all of his results in his business unit and how he'd managed to get this person to perform when they'd been an underperformer forever. And basically, I just became an audience for him to acknowledge and approve and clap, and, you know, and now I would see that as I didn't make it safe enough for him to talk about anything deeper. You know, he had to keep that persona in place in some way in that room for all those sessions. And, you know, what would I do differently now? And it wouldn't be about criticizing him or shaming him or forcing him, but in some way I would want to create enough safety for him to go into some of the deeper heart of 3, being at the heart of the heart center and knowing the pain of worthlessness that is underneath all of that compensation. So yeah, I would do things very differently now, but in a trauma-informed way, to be very sensitive with that person and very validating of their type strategy. So we're selling all of these beautiful things, and we can be confident that we're working with a system that is about this. It's about aliveness. It's about wholeness. It's about the restoration of our instinctual intelligence. The Enneagram really offers a beautiful cosmology and a beautiful view of the potential of a human person when they get in touch with these essential qualities. So I like to really think about, how do I create a space in which you, Susan, can reconnect with your inner worth, with your sense of that holy origin down the line to 4, where you go from the 2, trying to earn love, to really knowing that there's this wellspring of holy origin rising up within you, and the love can just flow, the golden love that Alma speaks about up too. So how do I create that space, which is very different from creating a space in which I tell you that's pride or that's the fixation. So you can, we're selling an alternative state of being, and there's real beauty there. So yeah, and we're selling this movement up the level. So it's not just about state. We're also selling people an alternative way of seeing the world and an alternative way of behaving that gets them on a virtuous cycle of things easing up in their lives, less driven by shame and reactivity. So I just chose a few of the levels here of the 9. So going from a constricted state where we're actually really suffering and acting out our suffering in ways that harm others, to a space where there's more expansiveness, we feel more free of that reactivity, and there's less fixity, there's less of a formula being applied all the time. We're able to be responsive and fluid and connect with the moment on its own terms. So if we can manage to be with the client in such a way as they get a sense of what they really are behind those defenses, rather than criticizing the defenses or the fixations or the vices in any way, but to be with them in such a way as they have moments of experiencing the equanimity or the sobriety or those heart qualities that bring such ease in the virtues, or an experience of a moment of the holy ideas. So if we coach in that way, we're building up some deep inner resources within the client that then spontaneously allow the personality to relax. Rather than criticizing the personality, the person doesn't necessarily feel they have an alternative. They've got nothing to fall back on. These things have built up over a long time. So we've got to have a plan B if we're going to take away the ego strategy. Now, like in your breakout room, that thing's worked for you. Why would you want to get rid of it? And what are you going to do instead? So we've got to create a space in which someone's got us something else that is true and deep and that they can count on, that feels real. So say for an Enneagram 6, they're not going to have courage unless they feel a deep inner groundedness, that they feel there's an inner authority that they can count on. They don't have to consult that inner committee. They actually are in touch with that inner wisdom and that inner guidance. And then that anxiety and consulting and worst case scenario just starts to naturally relax. So that's really part of this, is understanding that when we criticize the ego, we trigger resistance because maybe the person doesn't yet have the resources to be able to allow that thing to relax. Let me show you another little video about how our ego strategy is really protecting us.
We're all resistant to change in some ways because old patterns that we have were once adaptive when we were younger. And therefore, because they were adaptive, they helped us to survive through something. They're deeply ingrained at a neurobiological level. And this is good. Having a pattern deeply ingrained means we don't have to learn the same thing over and over. We know what to do in a situation. And it's not resistance that we're dealing with. It's not an unconscious desire for something else. It's just the fact that there's a brain circuit that's running in there. And we need to identify that and discuss it with the client and to say, here is your old pattern. These are the ways that you have told me that it gets in the way. We need to install new wiring. And here is how we're going to go about it.
So I wonder how her metaphors are landing with you. I don't particularly like mechanical metaphors like installing and wiring, but overall I like her message of the validation. And I think that's really what I'm trying to communicate in the session today, is how we validate the ego strategy. Like, this has worked, it's very effective. It was formed in childhood as almost a piece of adaptive genius. And it was formed before you had language and before you could consciously decide that it was going to work. It was what was available to you in that early holding environment with the particular deficits of that holding environment. So with that validation, to be able to then start to explore the ways in which it is self-limiting. So what I want to do now is, I've got slides here talking about the different Hornivian Triads and their stances. And really these stances are a way of defending against the world, defending against negative experiences. So what I want to do is unshare, and then we can go through a little, some examples of clients, or even if you don't have clients, maybe you want to talk about a family member or somebody who you've found very resistant to any kind of change. And then we can explore what might that be about. So I don't know if anyone wants to volunteer a client or a type, like let's not talk about 9 again, let's talk about one of the other types. maybe a heart type or a head type. Anyone want to give an example of someone they've worked with that they've experienced as extremely resistant and frustrating as a client? I've got lots of examples. Is it Manal? Is that how I pronounce your name? Thanks, Manal.
Yeah. I would like to share my experience with a social 2.
Okay.
And with a social 2, it's very, very hard for them to even accept that they have a problem. They just, you know, my client, she had the test and her stress levels were high on every aspect of her life, every aspect. And when she saw the report, and she was acting like everything was perfect, and this really shook her, that you know, that the test really, she felt like she was being exposed. She was very, very uncomfortable with reading her report. And she just tried to show me that any suggestion that I would do, any question, she would readily agree with me, and that she's doing the work week after week. There is this progress that seemed unreal. Like she knows what's expected of her. She's delivering it, but it did not seem like it was the real thing to me.
Okay, that's a wonderful example. Thank you so much. And do you know what the other elements in her tri-type were?
2, she was a 2, her tri-type was 2, 7, I can't remember the third, 2, 7, 8.
Okay.
She was 2, 7, 8. Yeah.
Okay, great. So let me share the slide that 2's on, the slide with the compliance types. Are you seeing the slide with 1, 2, and 6? Okay, great. So let's have a look at this. So if you think about the childhood of 2s, I've done the 3-week course on the childhood patterns that draws on all the different teachers around the common childhood patterns of 2s. So what you usually find with 2s is that early in childhood, their needs were shamed. So if they expressed their needs, they were negated in some way, either overtly or tacitly, that their needs aren't important. Or many of the 2s I've worked with, or who I know socially as well, were very overtly shamed as being bad people, very rejected at some level. So 2 is a rejection type, and they're also a compliant type. So that means that they're going to do what they need to do to go along with other people and repress completely their own needs. So the thing that they most disavow is their own neediness. And that's because they had to. It was very, very important for them in childhood to not have needs. And it would have been dangerous for them to express their needs because it wasn't safe for them to do so. So you're encountering somebody who has learned their whole life not to be in touch with their own feelings and needs, to not be able to look inside because it just wasn't really allowed. So how are you going to work with someone in a way that they begin to be able to acknowledge with humility the fact that they have needs, the fact that they're in a difficult place, the fact that they need support, because that's like their worst nightmare. And also the defense mechanism of 2 being repression, that's an unconscious defense mechanism. They're not doing it consciously. And also the pride as the device is it's a compensation for feeling like I'm bad, I don't matter, I've been rejected, I'm unlovable. So fundamentally feeling unlovable at some level. Then the compensation is pride. Like, I'm such a giving person, I'm so caring, I look after all these people, I rescue them, I never think about my own needs. So that's all keeping it in place. And they're in the image corner of the Enneagram, 2, 3, and 4, the image types. So what you find with the image types is their identity has been wounded. Their sense of self has been wounded in childhood. So for them to give up their image, which is keeping them having a sense of self and feeling okay, is very, very threatening. And the reports are quite shaming. The reports are very critical and exposing, as you know. They don't hold back on, going in for the jugular on, these are the downsides and this is how people see you and this is where they don't like you. We call it the eek factor, but it's actually sometimes a moment of horror for people to have their ego strategy so attacked. Like, I had a 3 recently where I was doing the debriefing, and she came into the session and she said, I feel as though this report has torn my whole personality apart, and everything that I valued about myself and everything I've tried to do has been trashed. And I don't really want my clients to feel that way. And I think 2s, 3s, and 4s can really feel that way when they read a report, that it pathologizes their whole way of being. So how do you then sit with someone like that and validate them, validate their strategy, recognize that they needed that strategy, and make them feel so safe and so comfortable that they start to get in touch with their feelings in a way that doesn't feel shameful for them? And in a really trauma-informed way, that you understand that you don't know what they went through to get the social 2 way of being, 2, 8, 7. 2 positive outlooks, 2 assertives. So you've got there the worthlessness wound of 2, I'm unlovable. You've got the 7, I'm not safe. You've got the 8, I can't trust anybody. So if you put those pictures together, you can get a sense that this person had to toughen up. 8 and 7 both disconnect from the heart center. So they didn't grow up in a place where they could really afford to have feelings and be sensitive. They had to focus on other people's needs for some reason. So, maybe their parent was an alcoholic or had borderline personality disorder. The stories I've heard from 2s are hectic. And then, toughening up, growing up very young, 8s. So really having the awareness of the kinds of stories that inform the development of these strategies, and just having that immense compassion for the person behind that strategy, and building rapport there with the 2. I find the rapport with the 2 based on genuine, open-hearted warmth, appreciation, connection, presence, really, really finding your love and appreciating that person on the Enneagram, their essence is golden love, and seeing it, training yourself to see the essence quality in the type that they channel, even if they're in a very constricted place, and to validate repression. So in your messaging to them, say, yeah, no, I really understand that, this is how you've needed to be, and to be able to follow a line of questioning that allows them to discover and validate their own feelings, rather than criticizing, like, you've got to stop rescuing everybody, and that kind of thing. So Manal, I don't know how that lands for you. I've been talking a lot. Let me hear from you.
I can, yeah, it matches the person that that I'm talking about, what you're saying, where they're coming from, how, you know, the upbringing must have shaped them to be this way. And yes, definitely the rapport was key for her to start to open up. And but the problem, like you said, is it's unconscious, the repression, and it happens between sessions. Like once she leaves, she goes back to that you know, automatic fixation. Yeah.
Yes.
It really, thank you for that.
So in that way, what I found is if we try and get the client to change quickly, then there's a backlash from the inner critic, because that ego strategy protected them so much when they were young that if they go against it, then there's part of themselves that thinks it's very dangerous and will re-shame them. Like, you better not have needs. That's bad. You're a selfish, bad person. There's a voice that's going to jump in straight away if they try and set boundaries. So you've got to help them to find ways in which to do it in a safe way. I call it safe to fail micro-experimentation. So is there a space in their life where they can set a tiny boundary just once? You know, it's like a trial period of, we're just going to experiment with the boundary in a way where it's not dangerous or shameful, and explore, okay, if you were to say that right now, how would that feel? And then if they say, no, I feel ashamed, they'd say, okay, let's make a much easier version. Let's find a context in which it would be very easy for you to set a small boundary, but that you haven't done it before. And then you find an example where the person could do a tiny thing. They say, oh, I feel relieved. Okay, so is this something that you might be able to try on Tuesday morning? Oh, I'm not so sure. Okay, let's think of a watered down version. So you get it to the point where they don't have to go all the way back to their old strategy. You create a tiny bit of space for the valid feelings to get a chance to be expressed. So then you're not fighting their ego strategy, you're not fighting their inner critic. You're working with the part of themselves that has some agency, that it has the potential to be more alive. So yeah, what are you hearing there? Am I making sense or whatever?
Yes, very much so. And what do I do with her fear once she finds out that she has feelings and that she has needs? Because it happened, like I introduced her to the emotional wheel, or wheel of emotions. And I just ask her whenever she has an encounter or during her day to check the emotional wheel and get, you know, and just make a check and see how am I feeling now. And for her, this was a little bit as well. It was scary. It was just having a feeling was new to her, like, and checking. Just how do you address the fear of just, you know, realizing that there's a person in there that have feelings and have needs? And
absolutely. Yeah, that's a really beautiful question, and I'm glad you appreciate how scary it is, because it's terrifying if you haven't allowed yourself to have feelings and needs to think that they might be there, because those were what was shamed when you were young. Well, that wasn't welcome. And now to have that there, it maybe feels like your life's going to fall apart. So it's really, really difficult. So you've got to titrate it, which is like taking a little sample of it, and maybe only for 5 minutes, and know that you build the client's capacity for change. Is, oh, okay, I could acknowledge my need then, that I was really tired and I needed to sit down for 10 minutes. Okay, cool, I did it. Okay, now the world didn't fall apart, that I had a need to relax. And just creating very small moments that the person can tolerate. So you actually have to build a person's capacity to be able to expand and grow. And it kind of doesn't make sense to us. Why wouldn't they want to be connected and feel lovable or whatever, for any type? Why wouldn't a 9 want to jump in and make a difference? They're so gifted. Why aren't they doing it? But we've got to understand there are very, very good reasons why they learned not to do it. And so I hope I'm making sense to you, Manal.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
So yeah, that validation, and if you can do it in the room with her, where you might be able to say, okay, so whatever her name is, what do you need from the session today? And then she might try and deflect the question because she doesn't know how. She wants to meet your need. And you say, no, let's talk about what would be valuable to you. What do you need most right now? And create a space in which her needs are so valid and so important, and you care so much about them. And you'll be able to see in the room what it feels like for her to have someone attuned to her who actually cares about them. And then she'll be able to take that moment out of the room as a memory of what it feels like for a need to be acknowledged and valid. And that's what one therapist calls remembered reciprocity, where you actually come out of a session and you've had an experience with somebody of what it feels like to be seen and validated and heard, maybe for the first time in your whole life. So if you can create those moments with her in the room, that I think would be really, really helpful for her, and it would dissolve a lot of that fear, resistance. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, thank you. That's very valuable. Thank you, Ingrid.
Thank you. Great. So should we move on to another type? Somebody bring a client or a type and what you've been up against and where you're so frustrated and feeling like such a failure. Whatever.
Inga,
Yeah.
I have the biggest issues with resistance with Enneagram 8s.
8. Okay, cool. So let's think about 8s. And if anyone's got stories about how they've really successfully worked with an 8, we can go there. I love 8s. I love them so much. So what's happening with 8s? So if you appreciate, and if you read The Spiritual Dimension of the Enneagram by Sandra Maitre, you understand that 8s needed to toughen up very young. They got the message that it's not safe to trust anybody. They experience the world as brutal, brutalizing, and dangerous, and that if you are powerless or weak, you are not going to do very well. The world's a jungle, you better toughen up, and you better not have weak and vulnerable feelings because you're going to be crushed. So best you crush those feelings first and get rid of them and negate them out of your existence, because they serve nothing. Like, what's the point of feeling weak and vulnerable? You're just going to be destroyed. So 8s are coming from the mindset that, no, my 1A client always used to say, life owes you nothing. You've got to, those people must toughen up. They must grow up. Life owes you nothing. And that's the narrative. And for 8s, the defense mechanism is denial. And the defense mechanism is unconscious. So they don't necessarily know what they're denying. They don't know that they're denying their own soft heart and vulnerability and that beautiful, innocent child that they had to disconnect from. They don't necessarily know that they are seeing other people as two-dimensional cardboard cutouts and denying their humanity. And they don't realize how much they're denying goodness in the world. So that denial and cynicism and false prejudice is the illusion of 8. They don't realize that they're stuck there. And it has worked for them without a doubt. There's a truth to the fact that life is tough and, it's better to be invulnerable than vulnerable. There's definitely truth to that. So how do we work with this part and find connection to the part of them that longs for connection, that is vulnerable, that is soft, that is actually one of the most sensitive types on the whole Enneagram? So I found with 8s, the way that I found most effective at building rapport with 8s is to be very direct with them, to be very truthful with them. So to say, listen, I know you came out 8, and I know that 8s love the truth. They just want to hear it straight up. So I'm going to be very direct with you. And that's because I respect you enough to tell you the truth. So I'm meeting you eye to eye here. Is that okay with you? And generally they'll appreciate that. So it's almost acting a bit tough, because 8s really don't like weakness, but then also demonstrating allyship with them, that you can trust, they can trust you, that you sort of identify with them. I like 8s to feel like I get it. That's why 8s get along so well with each other, because they'll both be saying like, pathetic, they must grow up. So to an extent, meeting them where they are and being able to say, I totally get you. You must be pulling your hair out, having to drag this organization into the 4th IR or whatever it is they're trying to do. You're trying to do all these things, and I can imagine how frustrated you are that there's so much prevarication and people are taking so long. So really validating their stance to an extent, but then at some level connecting with that more vulnerable part. And I think I go all the way with 8s because I like them and I understand them, and I've had quite a few in my life. My sister's an 8. I just baby them. I say, everybody knows you're just a marshmallow, you're such a softie. And, I kind of baby them a little bit, and they respond really well to it. They love it because I treat them as these innocent, soft, beautiful, warm people full of magnanimity and beneficence and no malice, and I don't know, that seems to really melt them in a way. They can feel that I care about them. And what I found with 8s is that they're so often treated as the bad guy in the world of the Enneagram. Like my sister came with me to one of the conferences, and she said that every time she told someone her type, they kind of had a bit of a bad reaction when they heard that she's an 8. And I know that 8s, I joke that 8s are Velcro for other people's negative projections. So people project badness onto 8s. They're like the bad guy of the Enneagram. And 8s are used to being treated that way, as if they're bad, and they've got a lot of remorse, for things in their past. They've got incredible remorse for the fact that they've disconnected from their vulnerable, loving part. And so how do we create a space in the room with the 8, again, in the room, where they can be vulnerable and soft, and where we meet them there and we help them to just create so much safety that hardness in the shell, the armor, starts to feel unnecessary for them. So that's been my experience. I don't know if you want to say anything about that, Renata. I don't know if that sounds very idealistic to you. Can you maybe talk about your experience a bit?
So I also love 8s and have some really good friends that are 8s. And I find I can establish the rapport and make it safe for them to be vulnerable with me in the session and in our coaching relationship. But in terms of the way they are especially when I work with teams and sometimes multiple teams underneath a director, where they do that thing where they close their heart to some people and they become very hard towards them. And I can get to even identify that, you know, there's people that are, the heart's open because the people that they like that are in, but then the people that they don't like and feel justified in not liking, and they're very hard on them, and quite brutal on them, and those people are all in fight or flight, and they're just not able to function well under that. And then they can acknowledge, yes, okay, so I get it. I get that the heart's open here. And then, you know, and we'll have some kind of a metaphor for, you know, the ones that are out in that are iced out, you know, they're kind of like, it feels like there was that childhood story, the one came up with a 1/8 leader came up with a metaphor. I think it's an Oscar Wilde thing with the giant's garden or something, you know, where when the children come in, it blossoms and it's warm, and then when they go out, it's like ice cold again. So there's people that are banished to the ice cold, and there's people that are basking in the sunshine. And it's like, how do you keep your heart open to those others so that it doesn't feel so punitive and you know, because that's what the people are grappling with, you know, where people are, their direct reports are so terrified of them, you know, that in the team session, like somebody goes like, there's a whole lot of stories about how scared they are of her. You know, when you take the elevator, we take the stairs. When you take the stairs, we take the lift.
Yeah.
You know, there's an unspoken rule in the office that nobody's allowed to wear high-heeled shoes because she wears high-heeled shoes. And when they hear high-heeled shoes coming up behind them at the desk, they get a complete panic attack. So everybody goes like, don't wear heels in the office. So, and then understanding that people are terrified, but then still feeling like that's justified, and it works for her. It works for her that people are scared of her. And at some level, it's cultivated, and that's how she likes it. But people are bleeding in the organization under that type of leadership.
Yeah, I get you. I've had exactly the same experience with one of my 8 clients, where in the session I was basking in the sunlight with the client, and I thought, wow, we're making such incredible progress in these coaching sessions. This person telling me all kinds of things, and they're so self-disclosing, and I'm seeing this beautiful soft heart, and you know, just amazed. And then he invited me to one of his team meetings to come and just be there. And I was actually completely shocked at how he spoke to his team members. And he had 2 of them in tears before the meeting was over. And I could see he thought nothing of it. He didn't care. So yeah, I think that's incredibly valid. So how would we work with that 8 in a way that they transfer some of the sunshine from those contexts to others? And there, I mean, I think we've really got to do the sales job of, there's something that could work better. You know, I mean, I've had 8 clients where, you know, I said to the one client, I said, yeah, I've been interviewing your staff members, and, you know, 5 of them called you Stalin in one day. And, you know, he was also just denial. It's like, pathetic, man, just because they've never had a boss who wants to get things done. So that's typical denial. So, yeah, I think there to appeal to the magnanimity, the generosity of the 8 heart, and to be able to really, there again, validate, you know, understand that, you know, being tough has really been necessary for you, but some of the unintended consequences that I'm picking up is this extreme level of intimidation, and I'm not really sure that you appreciate how you fill a room and how scared people are. And what I found with 8s is that they genuinely often don't know how big their energy is and how much they fill a room, and they don't want to hurt people. It just takes a bit of time to get them to see that other people are not two-dimensional, and to bring the open-hearted compassion that they have in one context into another, like to to use that resource and say, okay, well, when I'm with you, I feel this sunshine, I feel this beautiful, generous spirit in you. And I'm wondering what it would be like for you if you took some of that into your team, just as an experiment on Tuesday. Tuesday is my favorite. To take some of this warmth and softness of heart into your meeting and to speak to that person who's driving you up the pole with a little bit of this, just as an experiment to see how things might shift. And if they can start experience the virtuous cycle of incremental positive feedback loops, then I think something happens. I don't know how that sounds to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds great.
Don't know. Yeah, but trying to, I mean, for me, it always just comes down to, are you prepared to make a tiny test trial, a tiny experiment in expressing your virtue, expressing the gift that you naturally channel in a space where you didn't think you could? Like, what if I just try 5 minutes of sobriety on Tuesday? No, like, just do something other than buy a course or do what sevens do, you know? It's like 5 minutes is a little test drive. And then I find that if you can just break the ice in that way, that things start to get a bit better. I don't know. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything there. Renata, anything else you want to say?
No, I just think it's, I think it's a journey, and, and I think often 8 leaders think that if I'm not tough, so it's to also get underneath the fear of, what'll happen, and if I don't have the strategy, because that's, it's the fear of how vulnerable I'll be and how ineffective and how, if I'm not being hard-assed and with people that, I'll fail in my mandate.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, there's that fear of, if I let this strategy down, things are going to go very badly for me. And that was true in childhood. It wasn't okay to be sensitive in the 8's childhood context. They usually witnessed injustice or brutality, or at best, a power imbalance. So, they have got it deeply wired that it's being vulnerable and soft is probably the worst idea ever. So, yeah.
We've got 3 hands up.
Okay, let's hear from who, I don't know who was first. Can I just go from left to right? Michael.
Very topical with an 8, and similar strategies about how to recognize himself. And I don't know whether you know the actor Nigel Havers, British actor, but he's such a nice guy, and he's so solicitous of other people. So I've left him with an instruction last session to be more Nigel Havers. But I know when he comes back, he'll go, well, it was all right. It was not enthused by it. And is that just a case of, okay, we'll do another exercise of being in even more Nigel Havers? Or is it a case of perhaps changing that strategy a little bit to elicit something else from him, but in the same bringing the heart up? And he's got a big heart. He's SO and very involved with everyone, solicitous to their needs, and he really takes care of his staff. But I know he's going to have that resistance because I've encountered it before. Where would you go with this?
Yeah, that's interesting. So unfortunately, I don't know Nigel Havers, but I would guess if he wasn't enthused by it, that it might have been a bridge too far, that you were wanting him to be like someone very unlike himself. And that it wasn't authentic. 8s are very much about truth, and they don't act. They don't sugarcoat. They don't really modify their style across contexts. So to try and get them to act would probably go against their grain in the first place. What I would try and do there is maybe to say, think of a space and a person with whom you feel you don't need to armor up. So is there somewhere or someone where you feel your natural softness coming out as an 8? And I would use the higher qualities of an 8, like these are the things that 8s naturally channel. They're one of the most sensitive types. When do you feel these kinds of things? And explore that situation in depth. Like, oh yes, I totally feel that when I'm with my grandchildren. And okay, what are you doing in that context? Oh, we're playing in nature and I'm helping them do this and that and that and that. And get them to experience that sensation of being that person in that state in the room. And say, okay, what does it feel like? Where do you feel it? What do your shoulders feel like? Like really taking a snapshot in time and then saying, okay, if you can remember this quality that you're talking about right now, what if in your performance appraisal of that person on Tuesday, you bring in some of this some of this person, this generosity, this protectiveness, which we know is there, it's undoubtedly there, then what? And they might still fight and say, no, that person's an asshole, they'll just take advantage of me. But, it's in tiny increments that, I don't know, that's what I would try. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, he's got a stepdaughter, and when he talks about her, he has such a state change. And I was using that as a lever out. And it was the Nigel Havers thing, is there was a program on the television, which I happened to see a bit of, and he happened to see it as well. So yeah, there are various anchors along the way, and signs that was going to be my way into bringing his heart up. And, yeah, funnily enough, I did give him right for 5 minutes when you leave the session. Now, go out and people who you trust, hold their gaze, hold your gaze a little, say twice as long as you might normally. So it was just little incremental things. Just exactly what you're saying. So I'm relieved about that. But it's that resistance I know I'm going to get at the next time, where he's just playing casual with it, but I think I just need to perhaps identify another direction for his heart, and allow him and encourage him to allow himself to feel it fully or more extensively, and allow it to express itself in what he does, little by little. Yeah, perfect. Great, thank you. Could you just show this slide for, what was it? There was one slide we didn't catch for 945, please.
I'll do that in a second. I just wanted to reflect on something there. Like, I hear some content about what happens outside the room, but I'm wondering what process questions or what process contact you're making with the soft part in the room. So not talking about the soft part, but, when you experience that casualness, to really say, I'm noticing a bit of a casualness here. How does it feel for you to be reporting back to me right now? So to try and get the attunement in the actual room as a way of bringing that out more. I don't know what process you go into.
In terms of eliciting stuff, he's done yoga. He's quite good at relaxing, grounding, and that allows a bit more freer flow and connection for him.
So yeah, I think for me, just a big part of it is are we establishing contact in the room and not talking about stuff? So the move from content to process, like what's happening between us right now? How are you feeling, Michael, sharing about your client in this context of all these people? That kind of thing of how are you now?
Me here now or with the client?
That would be the kind of question I would ask.
Oh, all right. Gotcha. Sorry.
Yeah.
Great.
So is that in any, what does that evoke for you? Is there anything there for you? What are you taking from this interaction we've just had, our conversation?
That I'm in the right direction. Perhaps being a little bit more subtle. I just do a bit more sensing and not grasping, but being more aware of what it is to be 8. You know, it's as a 5, it's where I need to go to. So I need to be aware of that as well. And also not wanting to force anything. That's something to be aware of.
Yeah, for sure.
And,
okay, great. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Just taking the time, we're going to end at about 6:30 here, Renata. Yeah, okay. So Alistair and Teresa, Alistair, can you go?
Cool, thank you. Well, Teresa was first, but I think since we're running out of time, I'll just be quick. I might go off topic, and if I do, just let me know, then we'll move on. But
I'll go like this, like they're doing something.
There was this amazing resource on Naranjo that you once sent to me from YouTube, which is now off. And he went through all the 27 subtypes. And one thing I got from it is he said, where are the 8s? And then he said, oh, that there are a few 8s in here because this is the type that would hardly come for an Enneagram session or getting typed or self-improvement. So my question today is about resistance in the sales room, right? Not in the session. Let's say I meet an 8 leader who's like, we don't need help here. How do I overcome that resistance? Because I'm assuming that, and this could be wrong, that most business leaders are like your 837. So that's pretty much where we need to sort of focus to be able to do the work. But if you can't get in to do the work, then it's a problem. So I'm really keen on just understanding how to overcome that resistance, particularly with an 8 leader who's saying, we don't need help here.
Thanks a lot. That's great. That's a very helpful thing. Let's look at the 837 slide. You're talking about that slide of the triple assertive. The triple assertive types are also the triple disconnected from the heart type. So if you know the scrambling of the centers aspect of the Enneagram, these are the 3 types that needed to disconnect from the heart in childhood for whatever reason, and can't really afford to have feelings, and don't think that having feelings is a very good idea at all for various reasons. So where you are bringing a human dimension into an organization or into a sales process where you're motivating, compassion, inclusion, connection, all of those things that we think our work is about, could be quite triggering. These are the types that are going to say, this touchy-feely bullshit, are we going to sing Kumbaya, are you going to make us cry? Those are the kinds of statements, the cynicism that comes from the assertive type sometimes, because they don't see the point of having feelings. Their whole life has been based on not having feelings. What's the point of feelings? They don't help you get things done. They don't help you be efficient. And they don't help you be upbeat and have a lovely life, So each of these types, if you're selling to them, you've got to appeal to something that they can connect with and that is meaningful to them. And I think that touchy-feely Kumbaya discourse is dying down now, because there's enough research evidence, and Harvard Business Review and Forbes and all the books speak about how leadership, behavior, compassion, empathy, and EQ is absolutely critical, and the best leaders have EQ. So you can sell the Enneagram as a way of developing interpersonal awareness or self-mastery without talking too much about the heart and feelings and sensitivity, just to create credibility that you understand their objectives. You know, you're going to get things done much better if people connect with your vision, if people feel like they're doing meaningful work. And in order to do that, even though you might feel like it's an actual waste of time and it's just irritating, you need to get people on board if you want to, you know, deliver on this world-class performance vision that you've got. And then they really get it, you know. I mean, they understand, especially if they understand that your priority is to get stuff done yesterday as efficiently as possible and not to, you know, complain about whatever, but just appreciating that other people are very different. And for them to get on board, they're going to have to feel X, Y, and Z, or they, you know, so that I find very helpful as a way of getting those people to really be excited about the work, to see how it's going to make them more effective, achieve their goals faster. I do a lot of work with trust. So, you know, you can do work around the speed of trust. Like, you want to get things done fast and efficiently, and you want buy-in. I don't ever use the word buy-in myself, but they do. Then we've got to look at other people's criteria for getting on board, and they're not the same as yours. So I don't know, how does that land for you?
Thank you. I really like that. I'll try it on Tuesday. Like you said. And I need to read The Speed of Trust. I bought it 4 years ago and I haven't read it yet.
Yeah. Well, so I haven't read the book either.
Yeah.
No, I haven't read the book either, but I use their little equation and I use it as a reference point and as a just as a thing to open people's minds to the fact that, yeah, things work much quicker and more fluidly when we don't have to question each other's motives and write 15 contracts. So, yeah, it's very helpful.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks, Alistair. I want to, so it's 6:10. We've got 20 minutes more. Take your point, Teresa, and then I want to go on to another type, and then we can start wrapping up. So what did you want to say, Teresa?
A great success I had with a very successful 8 lady was for her to actually understand what her force was, that her energetically what it was. And in her opinion, she was like accommodating, compromising all the time. I'm doing that all the time. What are you talking about? You know, so going back to your example of actually feeling it in the body. We were going then out to sort of a dinner table, and I just said to her, could she just while we were at dinner not speak and not interrupt? And because she always cut off and finished people's sentences, especially you know, somebody she knew, her husband, because it was just, she knew what he was going to say, and it was just quicker to get the conversation over with. So what it made me appreciate, she sat next to me and she tried not to speak, and then halfway through the meal she had to sit on her hands, actually physically sit on it. And what it made me realize energetically was the force that's running through her, this up and out energy. You know, to try and contain that is difficult, and they don't, and they sort of fills a room and it's up and out. And she, I don't know, it was 40 minutes she sat and contained the energy in her body, and she got the first somatic sense of how energetically uncomfortable she was, to get a sense of she just got an inkling of how that oomph of that energy is uncomfortable for other people, rather than always seeing it as the idealized way of it gets things done, it gets things moving, which it does. So that just somatically, it was a very short exercise, but it was almost unbearable for her, and I thought she was going to lift off the seat when she had to suddenly put a cork on the energy. So it was just something that helped her see what everybody else was talking about, because, as I say, in her opinion, she was always accommodating, always, not getting her way. So
makes sense. Like she actually got a taste of her own energy by sitting with it and holding it.
Trying to contain it, because that energy is fantastic. I mean, it's just such a up and out and movement, and it's a great gift, but she couldn't quite see what the harm it was doing until she tried to contain it, and then she saw the power of it.
Very interesting strategy. Clever. Thank you. Yeah, and I'm just bringing to mind what Orania said to me about 8s. You can't tell an 8 to turn it down, and a lot of people try. It's like people try and pep talk and boost and give 9s a stick of dynamite, and that doesn't work. And turning 8s down doesn't work. It's about how do you channel the core power of that center.
It's like trying to turn a waterfall down. You can't. It's an energetic, up and out energy. It's, as you say, it's just all they can possibly do is sort of direct it a bit more skillfully. That's it's we wouldn't want to be turning it down.
Yeah, and also to just what I find helpful as well is just to really, as part of the psychoeducation element of Enneagram coaching, is to give people information about the essence qualities, as your sacred ground is power. And what does that mean? It's a beneficent power. It's the power that makes things get done. It's the supreme, overwhelming magnitude of things existing, like whatever. I'm using very silly language here. But working with the essence qualities to remind people of who they are, so that they don't need these defensive stances. The defensive stance is so flimsy and insignificant in comparison to the incredible beauty of who somebody really is. So I suppose this is the 794 in me. I completely idealize my clients and I see their true nature, and but I've got to watch that, like making the client feel pressurized to live up to my idealization. It's also not helpful, to put all this pressure on the client to be as amazing as I think they are. So yeah, but let's hear about another type. Let's go from 8s to maybe another type. Who is anyone else bashing up their head against a wall with, or imagining they're not having success with? Let's do another one that we haven't done before. Anyone? Caroline, let me ask you. You always got interesting stories. No pressure. Sorry, I'm cheerleading.
No. Yeah, as you've been talking, I guess I've been thinking of, as I'm working with someone, so this is more in partnership rather than with a client, and she's a 6 and I'm a 7, social 7. And one of the things that we both work with the same coach, who is a coach experienced in somatic experiencing. And one of the things that she's been doing with us individually that we are now becoming more aware of in our work together is in our type, what we come up against, and then working with the law of 3. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And that, just this essence of what is it that we're seeking? What is it that we're avoiding? And then the reconciliation with that. And I think recognizing sometimes it's a specific life experience that we've had, and then being able to talk about it with each other. And then that also helps just bring more awareness of our whole selves as people, as we're working with each other. And and also what might be showing up in that moment. Like I went on holiday with a family of 27 people, and my nervous system got overwhelmed, and I thought there was a particular family dynamic going on, and a choice that my husband and I made to change accommodations to the benefit of my stepdaughter, and we went into a different house, and we thought we were both absolutely fine with that, and we realized we weren't. And speaking for myself, my head wanted to say I'm absolutely fine with this change, and I made the choice around that, and my body and my nervous system needed time to process that. And so being able to look at what I was seeking and then face what I was avoiding. And I think I had been able to do that during the holiday by labeling the parts and being able to say, I feel isolated, I feel left out because they're all in one house and we're over here. I was able to name that, but I did not give enough space to acknowledge what I was avoiding and allowing that to process. So I think it ties a little bit back, Teresa, with your point as a 9 of needing space to process something that, even though I'm a 7, that resonated very much with me, where I had gone into the withdrawal rather than allowing a healthy processing, and then being able to go back into the group and share with the family a version of my experience to reconnect. So I'm sorry, Ingrid, I'm not answering directly around experience of a client, but as I've been listening to the session today, I've just been coming back to the partnering with a business partner and how we see our 6 and our 7 and the practice in ourselves and with each other around this. What are we seeking? What are we avoiding? Holding space with each other. And sometimes we go in with a business meeting. This is the task we need to accomplish, and actually recognizing that we need to recognize how we're showing up. And there's a need to process. And that doesn't have to be a whole hour. It just can be, this is what we need to acknowledge. And there's always a sense of reconnecting and then some growth. I think there's an understanding each other better, and then there's more of ourselves that we're able to bring back in.
Well, the thing I'm picking up there, I know as a 7 as well, process is always delayed, that we can make decisions, the head and the body are scrambled and the heart is left out. So we make decisions and we do stuff, and then it only dawns on us later that there are feelings involved, and those take time to process, and there's pain there, and there's regret, and it's difficult to actually allow the feelings and to touch into them. So even being able to connect with your colleague once you've discovered what the feelings are, and to share and to be prepared to go into that conversation is, it's already a departure from the stance of 7, which is, never mind, let's just let it go, man, let's just have fun. To avoid the feelings, to avoid the conversation, because process conversations for 7s are really difficult. But I'm here with you now, and I'm hearing your feelings. That's very threatening, because we might be criticized, we might encounter something painful that we don't want to be with. So to be able to do that process with someone incredibly powerful, but it takes courage what you're doing.
Yeah, no, that very much resonates, because I love your point around it takes time to connect with the heart and the feelings. I think I think my husband got there faster than me. How are you doing, Kara? I'm fine. So that took 2 days to acknowledge that actually I'm not fine, and here's what's going on. And that my instinct definitely was, there was one situation with one of the family members he said, should we have a family conversation around whatever, or should we just let everybody go to the beach? And my whole visceral was, let's just go to the beach. Let's just all go to the beach. and instead taking a breath and saying, you know what, I think you're right. We need a family conversation here. And it was very uncomfortable for me. And I was so grateful that he gave me that opportunity to grow into that. So yes, just acknowledging that it is a very viscerally uncomfortable experience.
Very much so. Like even when you say, should we have a family conversation, I get this like wave of anxiety and a slight nausea. It's like when you get a text from, we need to talk. It's like, no.
I use a slightly stronger word than that, but
So with the step of appreciating, like coming into the moment or having a difficult feeling or having any feeling opens the door to difficult feelings. It's not fun. No, we don't want. And even Alistair, I remember we once were joking, like, you know, people talk about the moment and be in the moment. Who wants to be in the moment? It's horrible. So we're coming towards the end, and just before we do that, I want to just quickly talk to you about a program that I am offering.
Ingrid.
Yeah.
Ingrid, I'm sorry. This is the social 7 in me. So feel free to, if we haven't got time to do this, but I have noticed that Amanda's hand's gone up more than once.
Oh, thank you.
And we haven't heard her voice. And I just would really appreciate hearing her voice if people don't mind making the time for that. Yeah.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Thanks for noticing. You can see that I'm kind of not watching anything or the chat, you know. So thank you. Amanda, are you still there? Have you given up on ever being heard or seen? Please appear. Thank you.
No. Hello, Caroline. So nice to see you.
You too, Amanda.
My point has kind of gone away a little bit. It was more to do with the 9. So it's not relevant anymore, but thank you for acknowledging me.
Didn't someone else want to look at 945?
Yeah, and we've got a lot of 9s in the room here, actually. We've got quite a few 9s. Raymond's here, Gail's here. Who else is here? Donnell's a 9. We've got a lot of 9s in the space. So I feel like maybe revisiting that. Who else is a 9 that I'm aware of? Manal's a 9, yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's look at 945. So we started with 9. Let's circle back here. So yeah. Amanda, is something jogging in your memory about what you'd like to reflect on, or no? Amanda?
No, so it was more a little a tip for the 9. I can't remember who was chatting about it in the beginning, but about the 9s always getting advice and being spoken at. And my partner of 14 years is a self-preservation 9, and something that has helped us in our relationship, it's not so much a coaching relationship because he refuses to be coached by me, which is actually a very healthy thing, I think. But it's something that we actually did yesterday that I find really helps. And it's again, just sitting at that point you made earlier, Ingrid, about, I can't remember who made it, but somebody said about, stopping to talk and letting the 9 actually experience a bit of silence. And to give you a tiny bit of background before I go too far into it, our place of work, we're in hospitality. So we work for 6 weeks on, 7 days a week, so you don't get a day off. And we've actually we're over 8 weeks now. So 8 weeks since the 28th of June, neither of us have had a day off at all. We don't get weekends. And so it's quite overwhelming for a 9 and he's in a role where everybody asks a lot of him, and he's a problem solver. So everybody brings their problems to him. And I know from a 9's perspective, that is quite a big trigger, is being constantly overloaded with other people's problems. And it's inherent in you that you want to just solve them to keep the peace. So he came home, we're about to go on an overseas holiday. We are right at the end of our tethers. And he came home and I could see the sort of the anger seeping out of him. And I kind of said, are you okay? What's going on? And, you know, being a coach and also, you know, quite an outgoing person, I like to also help solve people's problems. But a really amazing tip that I've learned over the years is just to offer the simple sentence, do you want comfort or solutions? And then I let him tell me which one he wants. I'm trying to think, I don't think he's ever let me say solutions, which is frustrating to me, but it's been good for him. And all he wanted was comfort. So I sat there. The first thing I did was I handed him a snack and I said, you probably need this. You're a self-preservation 9. So snacks are important. And then the second thing was I said, do you need comfort? And he said, yes. And instead of just giving him a hug, all he wanted to do was just vent. And he went off for about 10 minutes. Every problem, everything, every frustration he's been having. And the intuition for me to say, oh, you could do this, or oh, tell that person this, or have you tried that, was hard to suppress. But in the end, it was definitely, I feel, something that worked for him, you know, to be able to just be the one giving problems to somebody else instead of taking on from everybody. And for me, not having anything to say, or, you know, there was nothing that, because a solution for a 9 often feels like criticism. So, so that was something I just wanted to share right in the beginning as a little tool for 9s, maybe even just in relationship, not necessarily as clients, but do you want comfort or do you want solutions? Because as a coach, we are so ingrained, it's so ingrained in us to give solutions. And sometimes it's just that, that kind of process of letting somebody just vent in a constructive way. So yeah, that was what I wanted to share.
That's so lovely. Thank you. I'm so glad that Caroline noticed your hand up and that we managed to get you to remember the thing, because like I'm hearing a lot in there, you know, just the invitation for that person's agency and needs and will and desires to be valid. For 9s, that was what didn't happen for them in childhood, that somebody asked, what do you need? What do you want? You exist. You have a right to exist. You have needs. And you're important. So you gave that message loud and clear, and you created an invitation. It's so beautiful. And then the best part as well is that the anger is welcome, allowed, validated. And, you know, anger work with 9s is just so important, because the wound is, you know, the wounded heart, the shattered heart is underneath that anger. And they don't, you know, when Orania says 9s take the anger, they put it in a steel box and then they bury it at the bottom of the sea, under the sea. And, you know, you can't really get to the original crime scene, is what one trauma theorist calls it, to you know, where did this strategy come from, until you've gone through the anger to the grief, the shattered heart, you know, of the 9. So thank you for that. I just love that. It's like, what do you need? What do you feel? Now I'm going to just zip and just let you express yourself, create space and safety, and no judgment, no advice. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
Pleasure. And snacks. Always provide snacks.
Snacks. Yeah, snacks are great. That's wonderful. Thank you. So before we sign off here, I want to just let you know about an upcoming program that I want you to know about in case you're interested. There's the harmonics one that I'm running. I think you might have seen the flyer and the invitation that that's coming up. And that is about using the trifix and the instincts with teams in team effectiveness. So in that one, we're going to be looking at doing a team analysis where you can actually really explore the dynamics in that team and where the breakdowns are in the team in terms of communication And you can use the same methodology in looking at breakdowns between levels. Like if you've got a self-praise dominant senior managers, but the ex-co is sexual dominant, what kinds of breakdowns happen there? So it's a lot about how to analyze a team or an organization, and then the kinds of processes you can do. So there are lots of slides and tools and all kinds of things there. That's coming up, and it's starting on the 12th of September. So that one's coming soon. And then the other one is the 5D Coaching Certificate. So that's a full program, IEA-Accredited Certificate program, if you want to coach with the Enneagram in a trauma-informed way. So that's a 9-month program. So if you're interested in either of those, please get hold of me, or let me put my web address in the chat if you want to go and take a look. And any of you who have ever done programs with me before will know that I love to make my teaching accessible. And if you need ridiculously generous payment terms, I do that. So yeah, if you are interested in either of those programs, and then the Enneagram and Trauma one, I think I'm only going to run again starting February next year. So just so you know about those, if you're interested in applying for the 5D or hopping on to the Team Instincts and Harmonics one. So that's that. And then I'll stay on for a little bit. That Russ Hudson and Sandra Matry free talk is going to start in about half an hour. So if you want to go to that, don't miss it. So yeah, let me see. Anyone got comments? Teresa's hands up. Let's hear some closing. And I know we were going to end now. So anyone who has to drop off, see you soon, I hope. Yeah, Teresa.
Ingrid, sorry, I'm just adding to the commercial break here just to say that Beatrice Chestnut and Urania Payas have been spent about the last 4 or 5 years coming up with a questionnaire to sort of give an alternative to the Integrative 9. So because there's coaches on here, I just wanted to say that there's a very good report. The report is really good that comes from it. So in England, we've got this Enneagram Alive, and B is coming on Wednesday the 7th in the evening to talk about typing, mistyping, and the new questionnaire. So it's just given a really good alternative to, you know, I know Integrated 9 is very good, but if anybody's interested in, you know, having the wisdom of being Uranio, you know, in your coaching, so to speak, to actually, if they want to come to that, it's £10, which I don't know what that is in rand, but not very much.
Can you put the link into the chat as well so people can go and check it out, please?
Yeah, and they've done it for years because they've done so much on these questions to get them calibrated. It's been a long time coming, so that it actually does give a, you know, a very good report on the person.
Oh.
And it's one part of the coaching process only, because being Uranio, obviously it's just to help coaches, because obviously the main thing is the relationship, but it's just a useful tool. They want to stress that.
Cool. Thank you.
I'll put the link in now.
Thank you. Great. Anyone want to add anything? If you're new, Eric, have you been to one of these before? Is this your first one?
Yeah, I think it's my second.
Okay. I don't remember spotting you last time.
Wonderful, thank you.
How did you find it today?
Very enlightening. Yeah, a lot of notes to review and journal about. Thank you.
Cool. Anyone else want to say anything? Those of you who didn't speak, Donal and Ray, you know, a bunch of you didn't speak. Anyone else want to reflect or add? Welcome.
I'll say thank you, and I always learn so much from you. So I'm just always fascinated by the depth of your knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
I think just kind of like a quick highlight on 9, you know, anger is always this question mark on the 9. And I find a lot of people either don't know how to talk about it for themselves if they're a 9, or a coach doesn't know how to bring it up for a 9. And the anger is, in my experience as a 9, interesting to almost play with self-cultivation, because when we can find ourselves really pissed off, it's when action becomes really available.
Yeah.
So anger is that stick of dynamite they talk about you need to get the 9 to get. The anger is the stick of dynamite.
Mm. Yeah, I find that with 9s, their power, that massive power of the gut center. You know, 8s, 9s, and 1s have the same power in that body center, and to kind of find ways of tapping into it, you know, that sense of there's something to be done to create a better world. There's goodness to happen here. And, you know, what evokes that powerful desire for goodness and to be part of goodness. I don't know if that resonates with you, but I've seen when 9s connect with that thing, it's so absolutely beautiful. The force of nature.
Susan's got her hand up, Ing.
Thanks, Susan.
Oh, can I just interrupt? Sorry, just want to interrupt. I wasn't saying that this questionnaire is in a opposition to the IQ 9. It's just as well as, you know, sometimes a different report might help. So I think I might have said it in a way that it's a competition. It's not. It's just a new thing on the market. So sorry. I'll stop now.
Teresa, we got it loud and clear that we're in no way establishing disharmony in our union.
No, of course not.
No.
The more the merrier.
Yeah. Thank you. Susan.
Yeah, just a quick note on 9s. One of the things that was like, I think, a huge catalyst and opener for one of my 9 clients, a leader actually in South Africa doing some different work, was in waking up her body. She was so suppressed on her anger, was stepping into Solves the First, and then tennis became like this huge body opener for her. She needed movement, she needed action. So that's just was a huge opener for her. Just wanted to share on that.
Fantastic. Well, one of the 9s that I'm thinking about when I speak about power and a force of nature is our Biodanza facilitator, Christoph van Staden. You're nodding, Manya. We have a Biodanza group at my house on Wednesday nights. It's the Enneagram and Biodanza. We call it the Enneagram Church of Hips and Feet. And we dance, and he's the facilitator. And wow, the amazing way in which he makes things happen in that space, the connection and the vitality that is there is so transformative and so healing. And yeah, it's just inspiring. I mean, I did like cajole him to start the group, and I'm very glad I did, but wow, it's just so cool. Manya, anything?
Yeah. I want to definitely have to say something in that, you know, it's really is potent stuff. And what I do want to say is that the depth of it kind of sinks in, the impact, the effectiveness, whatever you want to call it. It's like, you know, I'm like now on my 3rd session with it, and it's quite amazing as, you know, the experience of participation kind of is sinking in over each time. And then even in the interim between the sessions, you know, it's really effective. And I think that it's also rolling and gathering more momentum as it's proceeding. So yeah, I mean, shamelessly to advertise and invite with that, very special.
But that's what I've realized about 9s is their healing power, the healing that they bring through that connectivity and wholeness and invitation for belonging and connectedness. It's just so incredibly healing. Yeah, thanks, Renata. I've also got to go soon. We're going to, who's coming to the Sandrometry and Russ thing?
Yeah, Ingrid, your website address isn't there.
Oh, I put it in the chat. So maybe
Did you tap enter?
Maybe not. Let me put it there.
Should be in the things that are in the emails.
Well, what I can tell you is that the people coming on these programs, oops, I sent it only to Eric. I don't know why. Eric, that's a sign from the Lord that you need to come. The takdīr.co.za. I always get the most incredible people to come. So if you join us, you're guaranteed to hear from real people with experience and wisdom and substance. It's the best. So yeah, wonderful to have you all here. Thanks for being here, and see you next time. Thanks, people. Lots of love.
Thanks so much. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Ingrid. Thank you, Narata.
So much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ing.
Ciao, Renata. Stay well. Hey?
Awesome session, darling. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
It was wonderful. Thank you both. Oops.